The day Kael Morn turned 18, the Grand Awakening Hall of Velthar was packed shoulder to shoulder. Noble families lined the upper galleries. Guild recruiters with clipboards stood at the far wall. Every youth in the kingdom came to this hall once, to have their class burned into the world. Scored, and their future decided in a single breath. Kael stood at the center pillar with his older brothers, Darren and Solt. Darren had gone first. The pillar blazed gold, and the hall announced it before he could speak. S-rank spellsword. The gallery erupted. Solt went second. Crimson Light, roaring applause, rank battle commander. Their father, Lord Aldrich Morn, stood in the gallery and allowed himself a rare smile. Then Kael stepped forward. He pressed his palm to the pillar. The hall went quiet. Nothing happened. Not a flicker, not a spark. The pillar stood cold and dead under his hand like he wasn't even there. A murmur ran through the hall. A guild recruiter crossed a line through his name. Someone in the gallery laughed. Small, involuntary, quickly smothered. The hallmaster cleared his throat. Null talent. No class detected. Lord Aldrich Morn did not look away from the pillar for a long moment. When he finally turned, his expression had already closed. He walked down from the gallery, crossed the floor, and stopped in front of Kael. He spoke quietly enough that only Kael could hear. "You are no longer a Morn," he walked out. Darren and Solt followed without glancing back. Kael stood in the empty center of the hall while the ceremony moved on around him. He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He had one thing left. The letter his mother had pressed into his hand 3 weeks ago, before the coughing took hold of her lungs, and the healers stopped pretending they could fix it. He hadn't opened it. She had told him. Open it when the pillar gives you its answer. He opened it in the street outside the hall. Kael, what the pillar tells you today is not the truth. What lives inside you is mine, and it is far older than any rank this kingdom knows. I sealed it inside you the night you were born, because the Velthar Guild Council came to our house and told your father that if a sovereign beast, tamer, ever awakened in the Morn line again, they would burn the estate to the ground. I gave them what they wanted, a boy with no detectable class. But I gave you something else. Wait for me. When I am gone, the seal lifts. I'm sorry I cannot be there to see it. Your mother. He read it twice. Then he folded it, put it in his coat, and started walking. 3 days later, at the edge of the Varenthal dungeon, Kael felt it. He'd been sleeping under the dungeon's outer ridge. No estate, no guild, no coin for an inn, when it hit him at 2 in the morning like a door slamming open inside his chest. His eyes opened. The stars above the ridge were still, and then the world came to him. Not sound, not light. Something older, a vibration at the base of his spine that rang outward in every direction. And everything that answered it was alive. A pack of iron wolves in the dungeon's 2nd level lifted their heads at the same moment. A nesting pair of stormhawks in the ridge above him went still. Something massive, deep in the dungeon's lower dark, stirred. System, Sovereign Class Unsealed Class. Sovereign Beast Tamer Tier, Unranked, Above Classification Sovereign Resonance Active. Contractable Entities Within Range, 14. Apex Entity Detected, Floor 9 Kael sat up. He looked at his hand. No glow, no aura, just the same worn dark coat and the same quiet night. But the dungeon felt different, like it was already listening. He walked in. He did not have a weapon. He did not have armor or a party or a guild badge. He walked through the 1st level, and the iron wolves parted for him, not fleeing, not attacking, but parting the way a crowd parts for someone it recognizes. He offered the contract on the 2nd level, and 6 of them accepted, folding into his resonance like they had been waiting. On the 4th level, 3 Stormhawks descended from the ceiling and circled him once before binding. The contract didn't ask for mana. It asked for acknowledgement. A sovereign sees you, you are seen. The deeper he went, the heavier the air got. Floor 9 had killed the last 3 A-rank parties that entered it. The after-action reports, posted outside the dungeon entrance, described a creature too large to corner, too fast to kite, and too durable to wear down, a Volthorn Titan, Class 7, the dungeon's apex. The guild had flagged the floor for a full raid clear, a raid that had been scheduled for 2 months and twice postponed. Kael found it at the center of the 9th floor. The Volthorn Titan was the size of a warehouse, bone-plated, 6-limbed, with eyes like molten copper. It looked at him, the 17 wolves, the hawks, the boy in the worn coat, and it made a sound that rattled dust from the ceiling. Kael held still. Sovereign resonance. Apex entity engaged. Offer contract. He extended the resonance. Full unguarded. The way his mother's letter had described it without describing it. The way you know to breathe. The Titan went motionless. The copper eyes dimmed and then burned brighter. The room shook with something that wasn't aggression. It lowered its head. Contract accepted. Volthorn Titan, Class 7. Sovereign bonded. Kale put his hand on the plate between its eyes and said nothing. There was nothing to say. He had just done what 3 A-rank parties could not. The Velthar Guild Council published the dungeon clear notice 6 weeks later and could not explain it. Solo clear, floor 9, Volthorn Titan neutralized, no registered hunter, no guild tag. The name on the submission, Kale Morn. The guild elders recognized that name. They sent investigators. The investigators found a camp at the dungeon's outer ridge that had grown into something else. A perimeter of contracted beasts that no investigator was willing to cross, a floor 9 apex creature that watched the tree line, and a young man with silver white hair who received them standing and did not sit down when they asked him to. They offered him a guild contract. He declined. They offered him a rank certification. He said his class did not appear in their ranking system, and he saw no reason to let them invent a category for it. The eldest guild elder, the same man who 18 years ago had gone to the Morn estate and delivered the ultimatum about sovereign beast tamers, looked at the Volthorn Titan and then back at Kale and said, nothing more. The story moved fast after that. A sovereign beast tamer, the first in a generation. A solo floor 9 clear with no registered class. 17 contracted beasts and an apex. Hunters talked. Guild recruiters who had crossed his name off their list that day in the hall now couldn't find a number for him. The Morn name resurfaced in the wrong way, not as a house that had produced 2 S ranks, but as the house that had thrown away a sovereign. Lord Aldrich Morn received the reports in his study and sat with them for a long time. His eldest guild's finances had contracted. 3 major contracts had been poached by a rival house. Darren's Spellsword unit had taken losses on the 7th floor of a northern dungeon and needed backup they could not afford to hire. Solt had made an enemy of a guild commissioner and needed political cover their house no longer had the weight to provide. Lord Aldrich arrived at the dungeon ridge on a gray morning with Darren and Solt behind him. They came on horseback, dressed formally, with a house seal and a letter of address. The Volthorn Titan watched them from the ridge. The Iron Wolves did not move. Kale received them outside. No gate, no hall, no formality. He stood in the same worn dark coat on a flat rock overlooking the dungeon entrance, with his arms at his sides, and he waited. His father dismounted. Darren and Solt stayed on their horses. Lord Aldrich looked older than Kale remembered. He held the house seal and then seemed to reconsider what it meant here, and he lowered it. We need your help, he said. Kale looked at him for a moment. The Volthorn Titan's copper eyes were steady behind him. I know, Kale said. He let the silence sit. The gray morning didn't move. His father, who had walked out of the awakening hall without looking back, stood in the dungeon's shadow and waited. I'll consider it, Kale said finally. Come back in 3 days with a full account of what you need and what you can offer. I'll give you an answer then. He turned and walked back toward the dungeon entrance. The wolves folded in around him. The Titan lowered its head and turned with him. He did not look back. His mother had been right about one thing above all others. The pillar's answer was not the truth. The truth had been waiting inside him all along, sealed and patient for exactly this moment. The moment the family that had discarded him stood at his gate and learned what they had thrown away. He was not angry. He did not need to be. The dungeon was his. The beasts were his. The sovereign class that the Guild Council had spent 18 years trying to erase from the Morn line had come back. And it had come back in the one son they had written off without a second glance. Kale walked into the dark of the dungeon, and the Volthorn Titan walked beside him, and the world of Velthar, slowly and without any fanfare, began to understand what a sovereign actually was.